All right, I think we're live. Hey friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Adanna, and on this channel I talk about all things books and book related things. If you're not new here, if you've been here for a while, you have noticed that I have been absent from this channel. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, I mean, there's been a lot of things happening in my life. I got married, moved, got a new job, so things have been quite hectic over here. But I haven't stopped reading, and I haven't stopped really just kind of being immersed in the bookish community, watching YouTubers and just being on Bookstagram. So I did want to make my return to YouTube. Like I said, I haven't stopped reading, and so there's been a couple of books that I have been just reading and loving and just wanted to share. So grab something to drink, something to sip on, and yeah, we'll go ahead and get right into it. So I will admit, I have not really enjoyed a lot of the books that I've read. I believe I've read 5 books so far this year. Quite a few of them are 2-star reads. Very many of them I had to push myself to finish and not DNF. But I don't know, there's, I think, a little bit of magic in books, in that some stories and types of, ways of writing, styles of writing resonate with one type of person and may not resonate with another. So I just like to I'm curious to know about what others are reading, whether they loved it, whether they didn't like it, what they liked about it and didn't like about it. So I wanted to take that opportunity to share that now. So the first book that I started the year off reading is a book called Killers of a Certain Age. So in this book, we find 4 women who are in their 60s, and they have had really long, interesting careers. They work for an organization, I believe, called The Board. The Board is kind of set up to kill back actors. So you think about like dictators or people that were part of the Nazi movement, people that have done bad things. Kind of operates similar to like the CIA, in which they will assign people to be killed off, for lack of a better way of saying it. So they recruit different members to come on to the organization in order to fulfill those tasks that the board assigns to them. So they've had this really long career working for this organization. They're coming up on their retirement. They go on this cruise. And just as a side note, so the board always gives a heads up if there's a person that's identified to be killed. So just to kind of let other members in the organization know, like, hey, this, it's kind of like public information within the organization of like who, different marks are and what the mission is expected to be. So they're on this cruise, and they notice that there's a fellow member that's on the cruise with them. There wasn't any information that there was going to be a mark on that cruise, and so they're kind of like, well, what the heck is going on? Like, this doesn't make sense. Why is this person here? So they try to find out through this member that's on this cruise, like, what's happening. Turns out they're the mark. They know that the only way that they could be the mark is because the board sanctioned it. And so it's a very thrilling story of how they're figuring out why they became the mark, and we kind of see them get out of that situation. I rated it 2 stars. 1, because I think the writing, it was not great to me, character development. So we have these 4 individual women who have very individual, we can tell, personalities and styles. I just really did not enjoy the way that this was written. It was kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but I didn't enjoy the way it was written. And it took me a bit to get into it. Like, I was probably 50-60% in before I started to get a feel for the story and kind of be like invested in the story. So when a book takes me that long to get into it, I either DNF or I really truly push myself to finish it. I am happy that I finished it, but just wasn't like the greatest story that I've read. So it's a 2-star, The second book that I read this year was also unfortunately a 2-star book. It was called The Bone Season, I believe. Bone Season by Samantha Shannon, Shannon Sharp, what the heck. It's about a 19-year-old woman who is in a futuristic world. So I believe that this story is set in like the 2060 or something like that, some or 2160, some future where there's magic and magic is actually outlawed. Shannon actually the main character actually has magic, so she's gifted in that way, and she ends up working for an overlord called, I believe his name is Jackson Hall. So she's working for him and she ends up getting caught. So the backstory is that magic is outlawed in this area. For whatever reason, magic is just not allowed, and there's different types of magical beings. So there are clairvoyants, there are dream walkers, there are people that can kind of shape and shift magic to their own needs. And then there are also people that don't have this ability. And it is quite a derogatory thing to have magic. She ends up getting identified as having magic and then ends up getting caught. She's then taken to a separate city in Oxford. She's assigned a master, Raphaelite, who is sort of supposed to be her trainer. So they are preparing for really kind of taking over the world. The thing is, this is really like a prison for her. Like they feed on these clairvoyants and these magical beings, feed on their magic, kind of keep them enslaved. And so she really doesn't want to be here. This is not a great place to be. But she also does, with this Raphaelite, have let's say a hidden ally in him. I won't spoil the story, but she ends up working with other clairvoyants that are trapped in this city. She ends up working with other clairvoyants that are trapped here, as well as unlikely allies to break free and eventually return to London. So, like I said, it was rated 2 stars. I don't know why I didn't like this one. I think it was the same issue in terms of it just took a while to get into the story. If I have to wait 40, 50, 60% to get into or be invested in the story, I'm kind of like, let's hurry up and get this over with. So, if you like a book that talks about otherness in a way that is really relatable or really understandable, then definitely would recommend this book. And you might like it more than I did. The next book that I read is quite a favorite of many people, and it's called 1984 by George Orwell. This was one of the weirdest books I have ever read. Talk about needing to slog through this book. It's quite fascinating. The concept is beautifully fascinating. We're talking about the idea of war being peace, slavery being freedom. Like when you think about like philosophy, I can never say philosophy the first time. It always takes me a couple of trials to get that. Anyway, philosophy. When you're thinking about that and just like the concept like of what is a word, or what's the concept of time, and like that is all of those like mind fucks like were present in this book. Just the idea of is what we know to be true actually true? Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. The book is actually about a man, I guess he's somewhat of a young man, I believe he's in his 30s, who come of age in this world where surveillance and freedom is no longer allowed. There is this movement that has co-opted different cities to the point of different power structures being enacted and created to serve a small few. There is no such thing as freedom of thought, freedom of expression. You have to abide by this concept of doublethink. So you don't think in terms of freedom. It is so weird. Like I don't even know how to like synthesize the meaning of this book. It's in terms of like dystopian themes, like this one is really super dystopian to the point that I can't even really adequately describe what the heck this book is about. Rated at 3 stars. Took me a hell of a long time to get through it, but people really love it. Yeah. So now I feel like we can actually talk about books that like I understand or understood what I was reading. So I read Tomorrrow by Gabrielle Zevin, and this was a really beautiful book about friendship and honestly platonic love. I feel like a lot of books don't really talk about like platonic, like deep platonic love in that way. There's no secret that on this channel I really don't enjoy romance, just like romance books like that. This book kind of touched romantically, but in a way that was like super platonic. Basically, it's about two friends who have known each other since they were 12. They're gamers, and so they end up meeting each other when one of them has was in an accident, and so he ends up spending a lot of time in a hospital. The other character, her sister, was in the hospital during that same time, and so they end up bonding over their love of a certain game. They become friends, and there was an issue where one of them got mad at the other, and then they kind of lost touch. Fast forward to them going to college, and they kind of rekindle their friendship, and they decide to make a game. And so it's talking about their life, basically starting from that initial like bonding of classic games to then creating games, and all of the, you know, highs and lows and pitfalls and, you know, valleys and peaks of friendship, how we have misunderstandings as friends, how we are really there for each other during very pivotal moments, how we expand and retract in terms of making space for our friends, how we include others into our friendships, and how that impacts and changes our initial friendship. So quite sad also. I felt myself a little bit like, oh, this is heart-wrenching at points, but I really did enjoy it, and I thought that it was really well written. And I actually want to read more from this particular author because I think she did an amazing job with writing this. So yeah, and I rated this, I believe, 4 stars. So the next book that I read is The Heart of a Sun Warrior by Sue Lynn Tan. This is the second in the Celestial Goddess, I believe. The Celestial Kingdom. I really enjoyed the Moon Goddess. I read that, I believe, 2 years ago, in 2022. So when I saw that this book was actually available at my library, I was like, ooh, let's get this, and let's definitely like finish out the series. Really loved it. This is a continuation of the story of Jing Ying. I know that I'm butchering that, and I mean no offense. But our character is come back to her home, her mom's home on the moon, and, you know, having a great time, no issues. All of a sudden there is a person or a group of people that come to visit, and she notices some really strange things about that visit. Well, I don't want to spoil it, but there's some strange things related to that visit, and there's actually a nefarious actor who ends up throwing her into a whole nother, like, really, she gets back into battle and has to like fight for her home yet again. So really great story in terms of really understanding what you actually want. She's in a position where she has 2 people that she loves, and she has to figure out which one is the right one for her. I don't want to spoil this story so much, but it's really beautiful the way it was written. Again, this had a lot of like flowery language. I don't remember the Daughter of the Moon Goddess being so flowery in terms of dialogue. So I think that the author did some things a little bit different with this book than that first book, but I still really quite enjoyed it, and I rated also a 4 out of 5 stars. So the last book that I have read so far this quarter is actually a very popular book. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called A Court of Thorns and Roses. So yeah, a couple of seconds ago when I said that I don't like romance books, there's no secret that on this channel I really don't enjoy romance. There's no secret that on this channel I really don't enjoy romance. No secret that on this channel I really don't enjoy romance. I don't like romance books. However, this is a book about, I even said this on my Goodreads. I said this is a heavy on the romance type of book, but it's set in fantasy. So, you know, we'll allow it. I think that this book was quite interesting. So I'm sure that I'm not the first person. I'm sure this book has been heavily reviewed and heavily talked about on YouTube. But as a quick synopsis, this is a book about a woman named Fair, and she's the youngest of three girls. She is kind of like the mom, like the caretaker of her family. Her mom ended up passing away, I believe when she was 8. She had to kind of look out for her family. Her father was I don't think he was a drunk, but he was someone that like gambled their family fortune, ended up losing it, so they ended up losing their standing within society, and ended up living in like a shack. Winters were hard, weren't able to provide for the family, so Fair, I think is how you say it, ended up having to go out and hunt, get money, basically keep them alive. So she ends up hunting one day and comes across a wolf. So in this area where they live, there's a wall or forest humans don't cross, and there's on that other side of that forest is, you know, lands of fairies. So fairies are like these mystical, magical creatures. There has been historic like folklore about their, you know, they'll eat you, they'll, you know, kill you, you know, they're like not nice beings. Humans don't want to go too far into the forest, or, you know, to cross to the other side. She ends up going into the forest to hunt, to try to find some food, and she comes across a wolf, and she ends up killing the wolf. Come to find out, this wolf was actually a friend of the High Lord fairy. So the High Lord ends up saying, okay, well, coming through and being like, who killed my friend? And she was like, oh, it was me. And so he ends up saying, okay, well, based off of this, you know, treaty, you have to, you know, it's like a life for life sort of thing. And he gives her the option of either coming and living with him or like dying on the spot. Of course, she was like, yeah, let me pack my bags and, you know, get over to the other side of the wall. And so when she goes over there, she's on guard, of course. She's like, I don't trust nobody. I don't trust anything. What's happening? She also sees the effect of fairies, just kind of like notices little strange things, right? And there were strange things happening. Things like they had to wear like masks, or they had a mask on that wouldn't come off. It's just like little things like that. Eventually, somehow, I don't really understand how, but she ends up like falling in love with this High Lord for reasons, again, I don't really quite fully understand, but she ends up falling in love with him, starts to trust him again, of course, or starts to trust him and then falls in love with him. Just a bunch of stuff happens. But yeah, I think the reason that I liked this book or tolerated the romance of it, because it is heavy on the romance. So but the reason that I enjoyed it, I think, is because, you know, you have that fantasy element. We're talking about magic, we're talking about, you know, this distant land, we're talking about, honestly, you know, bravery. Like Faye has to be, she's the only human in this area, and she ends up having to save these magical beings based off of her own like strength, ingenuity, and her loves. I thought that was a really good book. Am I gonna finish the whole entire series? I don't know. I have to take these romance bits a little at a time, you know, so maybe in 2 or 3 years I'll pick up the next one. Yeah, it might be a while before I finish out the series, but I actually quite enjoyed this book. I didn't hate it as much as I thought it was going to. It took me a hell of a long time to get it at the library, and so by the time I guess I was able to, it was available for me, I was like, well, we're gonna finish this book, okay? So I think that might have been a part of it as well. But no, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I tried to read it, and yeah, I would actually recommend it. If you are interested in fantasy books, it's a really good fantasy book, and I quite enjoyed it. Alright, so that is it for all of the books that I have read this quarter. If you have enjoyed this video, definitely give me a thumbs up. Let me know which of these books on this list that I've read, that you have read yourself. What did you think about them? What did you rate them? And what are you reading? Let me know. Like, put them in the comment section. I'm trying to build out a full kind of TBR. I know I'm not really great at like TBRs, but I'm kind of like a mood reader, so I'll just read whatever. But if I do see something in the comment section that looks interesting, I will definitely add it to my list for sure. So yeah, let's all comment what we've been reading, what we've been up to, and yeah, thank you so much for pressing play on today's video, for being here with me today, and I will see you in the next one.